If you're trying to land a software engineering internship in 2026, I have some news for you, bro. You're absolutely cooked. There's thousands of students applying every single day. Companies are laying off workers left and right, and AI is going to be taking all of your jobs in just a couple years. The competition is just insane. If you sound like this, I'm going to be honest, you're just not locked in. Hey guys, I'm Koba, and in today's video, I'm going to be going over the steps you need to take to actually land a software engineering internship. For the most part, this video is targeted for beginners, but I think at every level you can take just a little bit of information and find it useful. So before we begin, this section, I didn't want to include it because I found it a bit cringe to brag about myself, but the CS community is so toxic that if I didn't show credentials, I feel like some of you won't think my information is valid. So I am currently working as a full-time software engineer that was converted from intern to full-time. I've gotten multiple internship offers from Microsoft, from Amazon, Bank of America, and Geneva, just to name a few. And I don't say this to show off because to some of you that might be very impressive, while to some others it might not be impressive at all. But the reason I want to tell you guys this is because I'm not cracked at all. I'm a very normal guy, and I just want to show you guys that it's very much possible if you just do the right things continuously. And as a side note, I'm sorry for fear-mongering in the beginning. I just needed a hook. But yeah, let's get into first the background of why the market is what it is right now. Back in 2021, there was a massive hiring boom. Companies and shareholders believed that hiring more software engineers would increase shareholder value, especially because there was a huge shift toward digital products. During COVID, people were relying less on physical systems and more on software, so companies rushed to hire engineers as fast as possible. Because of that hiring boom, the market eventually became oversaturated. Salaries shot up like crazy, companies were hiring aggressively, and a lot of people saw software engineering as this guaranteed high-paying career path. Now that we're in 2026, we're going through sort of a market correction now for a few years. After that massive hiring spree, companies are now hiring fewer interns and being way more selective. They expect more from the candidates than they did before. At the same time, everyone is learning how to code. You have people coming from CS degrees, coding boot camps, self-taught developers, and online programs. There's just a massive supply of candidates entering the field at any given moment. And then we add the layer of AI, where there's billions of productivity tools coming out every single day, changing how engineers work, and then companies expect you to move faster, understand more, and be more productive than ever before. So basically what's happening is that the market is correcting itself. But the issue is that there's still a lot of students that saw these high salaries, saw the hype around tech, and the lifestyle that comes with being a software engineer, and they all rushed into the field at the exact same time. That's the environment we're dealing with right now. This doesn't mean that software engineering is dead. It just means that the easy path is gone. The days where you could do the bare minimum and still land an internship are mostly over. But at the same time, if you're pursuing this degree and you genuinely want to do this, it is still completely possible to land an internship. There are opportunities out there. You just need to understand the reality of the market and be willing to compete for those internships. Look, I do want to preface that a lot of you might find this advice to be very basic advice. I get it. But in my experience, 50% of students, maybe even more, don't even do half these things I'm about to tell you. In my experience, and my friends' experience that have also landed big-time internships, I've seen these steps work time and time again. So take my advice, don't take it, it's all fine. But yeah, let's just get straight into it. First and foremost, please take your classes seriously. A lot of people might find this to be dumb advice or very obvious advice, but from my experience, I wish I took my classes more seriously. Granted, I did get good grades in school, but it's just being intentional about your learning and using that to fill in your projects. A lot of people do it backwards. Instead, they use projects or experiences to learn from, which is not inherently a bad thing. It's just more that when you become intentional about the fundamentals, you make a bigger long-term investment. And that's the idea. We want to get prepared for the job, not just get to the internship and then get everything else. Data structures, algorithms, operating systems, networking, these are the foundations of the things you will touch every single day once you start working. A lot of people skip the step, they jump straight into projects and internships, but if you don't understand the basics of computer science, you're going to struggle later in interviews and on the job. Once you understand the basics, you should start building projects. A lot of people get scared of just making stuff and not realizing that anything they have an idea for, they can literally make in seconds. Just don't follow YouTube tutorials. Going through tutorial hell is a canon event, but please, if you can avoid this as much as possible. It's so important to make your own quality projects in college, especially if you don't have experience. It is already so hard to get experience in software engineering that making a quality project that's really thought out, taking your time, and learning new technologies, recruiters love seeing that. I don't know how many times in college I would review resumes and I would see students have the same exact project from the same class. If you don't already know, recruiters get assigned by schools. So these recruiters that come to your school and are reviewing the resumes of your peers are seeing the exact same projects. And that will literally put you in the denial pile. Don't be this person. Make quality projects because it will not only help you look better for recruiters, but it will help you learn technologies, learn what you might like in software engineering, and help you on the job. Look, I also understand that a lot of you are very busy college students, and that's totally fine. I understand that. Some of you are even working to even go to school, so it's hard to find time to consistently work on a project. That's why hackathons are such a great opportunity for you to not only get experience, but to make a project and work on a team. Recruiters love seeing teamwork. Even if you don't win, you can post that project on your resume or even on LinkedIn. Now that you have some projects under your belt, the next and most important thing is to get experience as fast as possible. At the end of the day, getting your first experience will be the hardest part of software engineering. But that's why you have to take advantage of the opportunities at your school. You can join different clubs that have various positions in software engineering or maybe even leadership positions. Companies love to see this. This is exactly what I did in university. I joined a professional student organization, and that allowed me to do different roles within that org of software engineering, leadership roles, and it helped me grow as an individual and as a software engineer because I got to work on their website, work on different design teams, and also talk to other people about their experience within my major. Another great way to get experience is honestly just doing anything you can on campus, even if it's not paid. You can do research labs with professors that might actually be paid. You can do startup work with a company that's local to your area, or maybe even start a freelance business just to get your feet wet. This is a great way to put stuff on your resume so you can use that to apply to big tech internships later on. I did something similar where I applied to a website that had companies post projects by the hour, meaning that I would get paid for a specific amount of hours of work. I ended up working for a startup company that paid me $300 for 15 hours of work to help work on their website, and they ended up keeping me later on and essentially extended me sort of as like a micro-internship. I was only getting paid $400 every 2 weeks, but that was great because all I wanted was the experience. It wasn't a very insane or transformative experience, but it was a great way to get my feet wet in the industry and use that as one of my greatest talking points in my early stages of recruiting. At the end of the day, experience is experience. Your goal should just be to get something on your resume as fast as possible that shows that you can work on real projects and work with real people. Awesome. So now you have a couple projects on a resume, or maybe just one really quality project. You have some leadership experience from a professional org, and maybe you've been helping them work on the website, and now you're ready to apply for some internships. The great thing about applying is that it can be very iteratively. You can apply maybe 5 minutes a day or just have a timer for when an application is about to open up. But the golden rule of applying for internship is apply early and apply often. I can't stress enough how important applying early is. If you don't know how interviews work, what a lot of companies do is that they sort of do like this rolling batch of interviews every so often. So when they open a job application, they'll take a first batch of students and interview those students, make their decisions, and then go with the next batch. If you apply late and the company has secretly filled headcount, you're getting interviewed for no reason. You're wasting time, resources. Granted, you do get the interview practice, but this is valuable time you can be using on another company. Some of the best ways you can stay on top of the internship game is by following job boards and following influencers that post the moment that these internships open up. You can follow job boards like internlist.com. You can search up on GitHub all the internships that are currently available for 2026. And you can follow influencers like Zero to Pseudo on Instagram or different LinkedIn warriors that post these job interviews and stay up to date as much as possible. One thing that people might not tell you about applications is the importance of getting a referral. Referrals are basically full-time employees referring you to a specific application and letting the company know that they should look at your resume. A referral essentially puts you in a different batch of interns that you're being compared to. This is usually a smaller pile of students, making you a little bit more competitive. Even though your referral won't make your entire application, it does help a certain amount that might get you over the edge of actually getting an interview. Great way to do this is by messaging upperclassmen that have graduated and work at these companies, message people on LinkedIn that have gone to your school and basically talking to them, a coffee chat and being a normal person, and then hopefully at the end of the conversation, they offer you a referral. And this isn't going to make your application or give you an internship right away, but it does give you probably that 5 to 10% more likelihood of getting an interview. And that's really important, especially with how competitive things have been. If you can separate yourself from the competition even a little bit, that's extremely important with how competitive things are right now. Finally, we get to the interview game. This is probably the worst part of the entire process, just because it's insanely stressful and there's a lot of prep that goes into it, but I got you guys with all the things you need. So most of you know this already, but an interview is made up of two different parts. There's a behavioral section of the exam where they'll basically ask you questions about your experience. This comes in the form of resume questions, questions about naming a time that you did X thing, or questions that they can use to gauge whether or not you'll be a cultural fit for their company. The second portion of the exam is a technical exam. This is where they ask you coding questions. They can gauge your knowledge of data structures and algorithms. I'll go into both in depth and give you an overarching view on what you should be doing for each exam. My experience is probably like 60% technical and 40% behavioral in terms of importance, but soft skills have become so important in the last few years that honestly, these are probably 50-50 in terms of importance. Okay, first and foremost, let's talk about the behavioral interview. The best way to get prepared for this is essentially just practice the questions that companies are most likely to ask. They want you to respond in a specific format called the STAR method, which is situation, task, action, and result. You structure your experiences based on this template, and you use those past experiences to showcase why you would be a good fit for the company. For example, let's say if I'm applying for a company like Microsoft, I'm going to research their values and tailor my responses to the specific things they want to see from their employees. One of the most important things at Microsoft is the growth mindset, meaning that you should be looking for ways to learn within what you do. In my stories, I'm going to give examples of growth and where I have the growth mindset in my responses. It's really important to review your resume as much as possible before taking interviews because you want to know what's on there. You want to be able to explain each bullet point you have and the importance of that experience or that project. This is probably the most important advice of this video is be a normal person. Not to give the major any stereotypes, but if you're an awkward person or you just can't be someone that someone else wants to work with, no matter how technical you are, you will not get hired. I have seen the rise of soft skills be so important nowadays because AI can do almost everything for us now. In a day, being technical 100% matters. In a major where there's a lot of awkward people, and I don't say that to shit on anyone. I'm just saying that a lot of people don't realize, like, you're trying to get hired to a company. If they don't want to work with you, then you're not going to get hired no matter how technical you are. And so it's really important to freshen up on your soft skills. Ask someone how they're doing. Be a normal person and just seem like someone that you can get along with. I feel like I see it all the time where I see someone that's very charismatic or very good at articulation getting jobs over someone that's way more technical than them. This is because communication is such an important aspect of the job. If you can articulate the architecture or specific features of what you're working on for a specific product, you are invaluable to the teams that you're working on. And that's what companies love to see. No matter how technical you are, if you can't elaborate or express yourself, you're going to be a detriment to the team. The next portion of the exam is a technical portion where they'll ask you leak code style questions. Leak code is basically a way for companies to ask you data structures and algorithms and gauge how much you know about coding. When it comes to leak code, it's sort of this very controversial topic in the interview game because a lot of people will give you different opinions on how much leak code you should study. The brutal, honest truth when it comes to leak code is that a majority of people think they know more leak code than they really do. My recommendation for the amount of leak code you should do is at a minimum 4 to 5 problems a week. And honestly, I would tell you to do a problem every single day, but for the sake of the average CS student, 4 to 5 problems is the absolute minimum you should be doing. There's a website called neetcode.io, which has a roadmap of all the data structures and algorithms. And by the time that you're interviewing, if you don't know at least a majority of those problems, then you're cooked, bro. And that's the honest truth. People are doing very minimal problems and just learning hash maps, learning string problems, and thinking that's enough to gain a job of $100,000 a year. You have to start getting into your mind that these companies are going to pay you hundreds of thousands of dollars just out of college. If you put this into perspective, you'll realize that it takes a lot more work to get these jobs than you really think. In my situation, I got really lucky. I didn't study as much lead code as I should, but at the end of the day, I focused on my elaboration and my articulation when it came to these problems. So the reason lead code is even in the interview process is because it's a great way for you to showcase the way that you solve problems. The only way you can showcase this though is if you actually speak during the interview. When you're doing a lead code problem, you should be vocalizing your exact thought process as you're going through your entire solution, why it works, why it is better than other solutions, and what you could have done differently or how you can improve it, and different things like that. That's why articulation is such an important part of the interview process, because the companies need to see how well of a communicator you are. Like I say all of this not to discourage you guys, but if anything, it should give you encouragement that if you just practice these things, you'll be more than fine in the interview. There's a lot of Slack channels that literally post and expose all the questions of all the different interviews that are going on. Like you can find interview questions for specific companies, and then people literally leak them in the Slacks, and then you can practice those questions. A great way to practice is mark interview with your friends. Behavior questions are online, the lead code questions are online, and just practice going through your resume and then practice the lead code questions that you're going to be asked in the actual interview. Finally, my last piece of advice is sort of like a cherry on top. And it's basically, you should network and go to events as much as possible. Events like career fairs are really important just to get your name out there. It's a lot better talking to recruiters in person because you can be more charismatic and really showcase how you feel about the company. You can also go to company events, which are like recruiting events for these specific companies. And that literally puts you in a specific pile, different from everyone else. They give you QR codes where you can apply to vague links. There's websites online where you can apply to these company events, and they'll literally fly you out to their events. It's that great experience, but then you also get to see these hosted tech talks, and it will literally inspire you to become a better engineer, or maybe even push you in a direction of the field that you're actually interested in. Going to these events is so important because then not only do you get more experience and get to see what's happening in the industry, but then you get to talk to real people, and especially if you've practiced all these little interview tips I've given you so far, people want to help you and want to give you direction. Sometimes getting in an interview is just about being in the right room at the right time. When it comes to the career fair, there's so much sort of like misinformation about career fairs, not necessarily in the sense that people are saying the wrong things, it's just what they're saying is not entirely true. So for example, when it comes to elevator pitches, this notion that an elevator pitch has to be like this 3-minute summary of your life is such bad advice because it puts you in a robotic, transactional, conversational state. I remember when I started in CS and I first got this advice, it sort of boxed me in completely because I was talking to a recruiter and I gave him a whole breakdown of my entire life and how I love CS and my passion, this and that. And then he literally asked me, oh, so what do you want? And then in that moment I blanked because I realized I wasn't prepared. I was just spewing a bunch of bullshit. Your pitch should just be a small introduction of yourself, but not even in the sense of where you walk up to something and you go straight into your elevator pitch. These are real people you're talking to, bro. Ask them how they're doing. Ask them how's it going in the event. And just be a normal person. And then you can introduce yourself. It's really important to ask recruiters good questions and ask yourself what you want out of this conversation. A lot of people go into the conversation like, oh, how's your day-to-day? And not even pay attention or really care what the people have to say. Like, why would an engineer ask a recruiter what's their day-to-day? Why do you care about the recruiter's day-to-day? No, find out what their position is. Okay, they're an engineer. Now you ask this question. But for recruiters, you ask about actual recruiting questions. And then for an engineer, you ask them about their day-to-day, the products they work on, how's the work culture there, etc., etc. A lot of people go into these recruiting events and then just basically beg for a job. No, you're a candidate as well. This is like dating almost. You need to find the match for yourself and someone that matches you as well. You can't just pray for someone to fall in your lap. That's why it's so important to make projects, to get a little bit of experience, because then you get more familiar with what you actually want to do in the field. Once you know what you want to do, you can ask specific questions, and recruiters love to see people with direction. Well, sometimes recruiters will ask you, oh, hey, so what do you want to do specifically? And even if you don't know, you can spew some bullshit like, oh, I'm interested in AI, but I'm open to anything. Recruiters love direction. They want to hear what you're interested in so they can team match you better. Point is, stop begging for a job and start thinking like an actual candidate. Last but not least, LinkedIn, bro. I know it's cringe. I know people hate using it. I know it's super corporate level, brain rot, everything. I know, bro. It's horrible. I hate it. But it's the name of the game. At the end of the day, you don't have to be a super LinkedIn warrior. You don't have to post every day. But it's the same thing in business. If you have a great product but no one knows about it, you're not going to buy it. I don't think you have to post every day. I think it's important to post maybe small wins, like internships, like different events you attend, or maybe even sometimes the projects you're making. I know people that posted their projects that seemed quote unquote not super impressive, but they've gotten internships or at least got reached out by recruiters because of that project. LinkedIn's also a great way to network with people where you can message people from your school or people that have gone to your school and are currently working, and then that's how you gain coffee chats, that's how you network, and that's how you get your questions answered about different internships, different companies, and then maybe sometimes the referral. Overall, I'm not going to speak too much about LinkedIn, but I know a lot of LinkedIn warriors that post a lot and they get a lot more opportunities just because of their visibility. It's even something you should consider. So yeah, guys, I think that's most of my advice I have for you. I think there's some things I wish I could have touched on a little bit more, but overall, I think if you guys follow these steps and follow them to an extent that is just undeniable, you will be fine. Some people do everything right and still struggle. I 100% understand that. Luck definitely exists. But in my opinion, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. If you are prepared, you just need the right opportunity. And if you get the opportunities and you're not executing, then you're not prepared. And that's something you have to come to the realization for. I know it's super unlucky sometimes, but most of the time, if you're not getting results, there's something you can improve on. And that's the accountability you need to have for yourself. Overall, keep at it, guys. I'm really proud of you. I know sometimes it's rough. I know the nights get really lonely. I know the hard work gets really stressful. But if you keep believing in yourself, you will get it done. Thank you guys so much. And until next time, peace.